Good day and welcome to the FRMO quarterly conference call. As a reminder, today's call is being recorded. At this time, I'd like to turn the conference over to Let's go ahead.
Thank you, Dan. Good afternoon, everyone. This is Therese Byers speaking, and I'm the Corporate Secretary of FRMO Corp. Thank you all for joining us today. The statements made on this call apply only as of today. The information on this call should not be construed to be a recommendation to purchase or sell any particular security or investment fund. The opinions referenced on this call today are not intended to be a forecast of future events or a guarantee of future results. It should not be assumed that any of the security transactions referenced today have been or will prove to be profitable, or that future investment decisions will be profitable or will equal or exceed the past performance of the investments. For additional information, you may visit the FRMO Corp website at www.frmocorp.com. Today's discussion will be led by Murray Stahl, Chairman and Chief Executive Officer. He will review key points related to the 2020 second quarter earnings. A summary transcript of this call will be posted on the FRMO website in the coming weeks. A replay of this call will be available for 1 month beginning at 7:15 this evening. To listen to the replay, call the domestic toll-free number is 1-888-203-1112. The international toll number is 1-719-457-0820. When prompted, key in the passcode 5894204. These dial-in numbers are noted in the FRMO press release dated January 14th, 2020, which may be found on the FRMO website by clicking the link called Information Statements and Announcements. The press release can also be viewed on the OTC Markets website by typing in the ticker symbol FRMO and clicking on the news link. And now I'll turn the discussion over to Mr. Stahl.
Okay, well, thank you. Thank you everyone for joining us, and thank you, Therese. To begin with the formalities, the reason my colleague, Mr. Bregman, isn't here is he is quite under the weather, and we agreed that it's better that he get into a bed and go to sleep if that's possible, or if it's not possible, just to rest. And people who customarily listen to these calls, you might remember that we've both done this call when we were very much under the weather. We were both sick. We were hacking and coughing and all the other things that go with having a cold. And today I feel pretty good, and he doesn't. So I'm doing it by myself, and we probably at some point contribute to each other's illnesses back in the day when we did this. So that's why it's me, and hopefully he'll be back to his former robust health in a couple of days. So that's that. And I say another thing in terms of general remarks about there's a lot of questions here, and either you're all collectively incredibly perceptive in following what we say very closely, or is it that maybe we say some things that piques your curiosity or has resonance with you? But the questions are really good, and the questions touch on many of the remarks I would ordinarily make in the prepared remarks section. So I'm not going to go into a lot of prepared remarks, leave more time for answering questions since you anticipated what I was going to say anyway, or at least you didn't anticipate. You're prompting me for information I would otherwise give you in prepared remarks. So just to answer your questions directly, hopefully it'll be specifically pertinent to what you want. Let me say a few things. These are general informational things. There are usually a lot of questions about cryptocurrency. So I'll give you some detail right now. You can write this stuff down, or maybe we could just send you a spreadsheet or something if you don't want to write it down. Anyway, most of the cryptocurrency we have is in the form of the Bitcoin Investment Trust, GBTC. So as of not long ago, in the Horizon Multi-Strategy Fund, which you can look at the market value as of the valuation date. In the notes, we had $9,298,000. I'm leaving out the hundreds of that in the Horizon Multi-Strategy Fund. In the Polestar Fund, we had $9,960,000. In CDK Partners, $661,000. And Horizon Multidisciplinary Fund, $894,000. We also have some GBTC shares that we hold directly, we bought back in the day, and the market value, by the way, I'm giving you the market values as not long ago. Based on today's market value, these numbers would be about 10% higher, numbers I'm giving you. So I don't know if exactly 10%, but 10% is close enough for our purposes. We also own 7,644 shares of GBTC directly, so you can value that. We own 33.59 Bitcoins themselves. We own 34.12 units of Ethereum. We own 591.66 units of Ethereum Classic. I would give you the prices, but they change every 5 minutes, so you can look them up. We own 42.59 units of Zcash and 210 units of Litecoin. We also own, through the Polestar Fund, about $82,000 of the Ethereum Classic Investment Trust and about $10,000 of the Zcash Investment Trust. And also in Polestar, we own about $15,000 worth of Litecoin Investment Trust. And we own about $54,000 of the Bitcoin Cash Investment Trust. And we own about $62,000 of the XRP, otherwise known as Ripple Investment Trust. All that is in the Polestar Fund, so it's not direct. And we also own, in the Horizon Multi-Strategy Fund, we own $64,000 of Bitcoin Cash directly in that fund. We own $29,000 roughly of Bitcoin SV. And Polestar owns about $5,500 of Bitcoin Gold. And CDK Partners owns about $5 or $50 of Bitcoin Gold. So add those numbers up, and it's a pretty decent-sized number. And the Horizon Multi-Strategy Fund also owns about $671,000 of XBT. And I think I've covered the cryptocurrency directly. So now when I gave you those numbers, those are not the numbers. Those are the numbers that those funds own in their entirety. So I don't want you to get the idea, even though this is the way it's presented to me. I'm just reading off the sheet. So, for example, what you need to do if you want to find out proportionally what FRMO owns, let's take the Polestar Fund example. I just told you Polestar owns $9,950,000 worth of Bitcoin. You need to multiply that number by the percentage ownership. And that percentage ownership is calculated for me on another sheet of paper, which I'm a little bit reluctant to give you, but I will give it to you because I'm not sure this is the right number. But in any event, the grand total, looking through an FRMO, this number is right, is about $5 million. And so if you do the calculation the way this is done, again, I'm not so sure this number is right. The Horizon Multi-Strategy Fund owns $2 million, looking through the FRMO ownership, because FRMO owns 28% of the Multi-Strategy Fund. FRMO owns $2,876,000 of cryptocurrency. In any event, the whole number comes to about $5 million when you look through. I have a feeling that number is about 10% higher. But as I said, I read you the numbers. You can do the calculation, and hopefully your calculation is in accord with what I just read you. But I want to give you all the information. Balance sheet highlights. I was going to say about 15 minutes ago, I thought our November 30th cash was the highest in our history, but it turns out it isn't. Turns out, about a year and a half ago, we actually had slightly higher cash. So if my math is right, we're about $44,000 below the all-time high cash. So anyway, the thrust of it was a very liquid balance sheet. Also, you'll observe some items in the line item, investment in securities exchanges. That's a lot bigger than it was in the prior quarter. Not that we bought something, we sold our pro rata interest in the Bermuda Stock Exchange to MIAX, Miami International Holdings, which is an options exchange and an equity exchange. We sold that for stock in MIAX itself. So we now have a decent sized investment in MIAX. One other big change, you'll notice a line, cryptocurrency mining assets, primarily servers. We used to have $101,000 worth of computer equipment, and now it's big enough. We have $1,281,000 worth of cryptocurrency mining assets. Another interesting thing is we also bought a building for $1 million. So we actually have some debt now. And we put $200,000 down, roughly, and we took a mortgage for the balance. You'll notice on the liability side of the balance sheet, there's $27,000 current portion of mortgage payable. That's the portion of mortgage, the principal, that we have to pay back within the next 12 months. The balance of the principal we borrowed, $772,000, is over the course of the life of the mortgage. We did it because the interest rate was less than 4%, and we're using it to house cryptocurrency operations. And we're informed, hopefully reliably, but I can't be sure, we're informed by a variety of sources that if we were to move the cryptocurrency equipment out of the building and were to develop the property or sell the property, we get a lot higher price. Whether it's true or not, I don't know, but so they say. So you have the highlights, and I believe, if I'm not mistaken, that shareholders' equity is at an all-time high, even with what we're doing here on given liquidity of balance sheet, given the lack of leverage and the lack of action in various things. And don't forget, cryptocurrency is down from its high, actually substantially, even though we'll talk about it in the question and answers. And so I think we're doing reasonably well. So those are the highlights. I thought what I do is I touch on the questions, which can fill in a lot of things, as I said before, I would have said in the prepared remarks. So here's the first question, and I'll read them as they're presented to me. The two biggest opportunities presented are Bitcoin and TPL. Why are they sized so differently with available assets? Okay, well, actually, they're not. What you see on the financial statement is the market appreciation. We didn't pay anything remotely close to current market values for the cryptocurrency. Matter of fact, some of the cryptocurrency we just created by mining it. We didn't pay anything like these prices. So when someone thinks about it, I can see why they'd say, why are market values so different? It's not that we like one greatly more than the other one. What we're doing is we're investing in assets that are, let's say, off the beaten track. The average person doesn't do things like this, and we're not investing tremendous sums of money. If Bitcoin were to be a failure relative to our cost, especially in net taxes, it wouldn't be a huge financial tragedy. The only way you can take risk is you have to start sizing things small. If you size it big and something bad happens, well, then you're impeding your future. In our case, we're not doing that. And more about that later when we talk about balance sheet and how we fund these investments, because there's questions that relate to that. We'll come back to this. Anyway, you get the idea. It's not that we decide to put X percent into Bitcoin and Y percent into something else. Now, you could say, okay, we could sell one and put it in the other and equalize them if we like them both equally, but there's a very high tax cost to doing that. So we'd rather not do that. So, for example, if you thought one was going to go down by X percent being the tax rate in market value, and you sold it, prevent that happening, but you pay taxes, then it's going to be a reality. So it doesn't really pay to sell these things, at least given the situation as it exists today. Okay, next question. I hope that's a little bit informative anyway. All right, there's some laudatory stuff that I'm going to have to, in the name of modesty, not read, but I'm very grateful that somebody thought that we deserve some laudatory stuff. But here's the actual substance of the question. What are some of your thoughts about the future of the Ren Fund, your closed-end fund? It's very small, has a lot of cash, trades a significant discount to its NAV, and earns no fees for Horizon Kinetics. It would seem like a perfect candidate to merge into one of your smaller, open-ended Horizon Kinetics mutual funds like Market Opportunities Fund or even the Medical Fund. Since such a merger would add bulk and cash to these funds, make the investment funds fee-paying to Horizon Kinetics and eliminate the discount, assuming such a merger would be done in NAV for the Ren holders. Is this a possibility? Would such a merger result in the end of the tax benefits, capital loss, carry-forwards that are inherent in Ren? Or could Ren grow by buying or merging with another closed-end fund, or by slowly continuing to do rights offerings on which there are apparent limits on how much can be done in a given year? Thanks for your thoughts on the Ren Fund. Okay, so to begin with, we are going to do things Ren Fund, so here's something I'm not going to do. We're not going to merge the Ren Fund with existing mutual funds. And there are a lot of reasons for that, but one good one is that we would unquestionably lose tax loss carry forwards that we purchased. So there are other reasons for not doing it, but that in itself is enough reason not to do it. We're going to start doing different things with the Ren Fund that you really couldn't do in a mutual fund. And I would love to tell you exactly what it is, but a couple of days from now, you'll see 8K, and you'll see some of what's going to happen. I don't know what day the attorney is going to post the 8K, or I would tell you, but I don't believe it's very many days. It's just the conference call is this day, and their filing is going to need a couple of days. So you're going to know we're going to do things. And we intend to grow the Ren Fund, and we have a lot of ideas on how that might happen, and the 8K is going to relate in a small way to one of it, but it relates in a bigger way to using the tax loss carry forward. So that's all I can tell you right now. I wish I could tell you more, but you'll see in a couple of days what we're doing. And you should expect other things. Hopefully they'll be creative and they'll be value additive. So look forward to your comments on that. Okay. Here's some other questions. In my opinion, how close are we to maximum performance on cryptocurrency mining servers? I know you have mentioned in the past that we might not be far off. Okay, so to answer that question, to give you an idea, the electricity consumption per terahash, or per server, if you want to look at it that way, relative to the prior generation, roughly, I'll be off by 1%, roughly is down 63%. So it costs you, in terms of operational expense, since electricity is overwhelmingly the biggest factor, 63% less to mine. That has implications we'll touch on in a second, but then the price per terahash. So here I'm going to pull my calculator out. Just give me a second so I can give you a number. But at the end of 2017, if you were buying an S9 Antminer, a 13.5 terahash S9 Antminer, on a good day, and people at the time thought this was a good deal, you would have been paying per terahash, according to my calculation, $162.96. Let's call them round numbers, $163. You can now buy a machine that consumes 63% less power than the former generation. It will cost you, I might be a few pennies off, roughly $23.50 per terahash. That's a huge increase. And I should tell you, because it's important, that when that happens, and I think there's a question that relates to this in some degree, so I guess I'm preempting the answer, but for Bitcoin, that's deflationary. It's deflationary for every cryptocurrency. Basically the same technology, give or take, is used in all the servers that mine any cryptocurrency. So why is deflationary? Well, think about it. You take a commodity like wheat or gold, and let's just say, for the sake of argument, that technology advanced so much that it just costs less money to grow wheat. It's a big savings for the producer. It would be logical to think that in the competitive world, all of that is going to be kept by the miners. It's not going to be kept by the miners for the simple reason that somebody's going to lower, if it was wheat, let's say, some farmer would lower their price to get market share. And cryptocurrency, viewed in that sense, is no different. And then, of course, the equipment. So think about this. We just talked about the cost of, let's say, the labor and harvesting the wheat, if we're using that analogy, or the cost of the seeds to plant the wheat or the fertilizer. That's the analogy for electricity costs. Those are the operating costs. Now, what about the equipment costs? You need harvesters, you need combines, you need tractors, you need barns, you need all sorts of things, maybe grain elevators. What does that sell in the manner in which I described? Let's say the cost per, let's say it was a tractor with horsepower. Let's say, these aren't accurate figures, but just for illustrative purposes, if a terahash was like 1 horsepower, and 1 horsepower used to be $163, and went to $23.50. Obviously, a tractor is a lot cheaper. That's the analogy. Well, that's what's happening in Bitcoin. So the equipment, and also more imponderable, the equipment is better. It just goes down less. It produces less heat, which lowers your air conditioning costs. It's just in every respect much better equipment. And ultimately, the thrust of your question is, when do we get to the point where that's it? In terms of the chips, I think they've done everything they can with the algorithm. However, the yield on the chips, which means when you actually create a wafer and you break it into parts, how much usable circuitry is on the wafer, that number keeps expanding. That's what drives the price down. We should be able to go to a narrower amount of nanometers, and we should be cheaper. I don't believe that process is complete, even though we've made a lot of progress. I think, which is another reason why in the mining portfolios we don't go all in with the cash, because we might have to replace equipment. Now, the quid pro quo is we don't have to replace. We don't have to buy as much equipment as we bought formerly because terahashes are so much cheaper. We can get the same processing power for a lower price. Anyway, I don't think we're going to make a radical change in terms of productivity in the next several months, but beyond that, there might be productivity to be gained. I hope that answers that question. Okay, there's a question here about TPL. Wondered if the flared gas could be used to power generators to run a mining operation rather than being wasted. Well, theoretically, anything is possible. Various people have thought of that, and at the moment, there are some firms talking to other firms. I don't think it's going on at any place that I'm involved in, but they're talking about buying flared gas. The problem in buying the flared gas is a variety of pipelines have just opened the last couple of months. So you have Cactus II, you have the ECL pipeline, you have Gray Oak, that's 3, taking away a lot of gas to the Gulf Coast. And I believe there are 3 others that are in the planning/execution stages. So the amount of throughput in terms of pipelines is only going to go up. It's going to go up a lot. So I don't know how many companies are going to be willing to just swap flared gas at zero price. When you have a royalty, you have theoretically the right to ask for the gas in kind. You don't have to take cash. So being flared, theoretically you could ask for the gas in kind, and you could turn it over to a miner that could burn it and drive a turbine. It's theoretically possible. And I think on a limited basis there are some people actually doing it. But then think about it from the point of view of a producer. You're betting on how much is crypto worth, what is mining profitability going to be, and they know gas is X per MCF, I shouldn't speak for all the people who produce natural gas in the state of Texas, but I think a lot of them are just going to want to take the price if they have a royalty and take the cash rather than do that. But who knows what's going to happen? It's very early in the process. Okay, is it my opinion that we will continue to see most of the inflation in certain areas like services and healthcare and housing? In my opinion, no. In my opinion, I suspect there's going to be deflation in housing. And one of the reasons I suspect that is because it's become unaffordable. And after new tax law, the property taxes are no longer deductible on your federal income tax. So you live in a high-tax area. I personally happen to live in a high-tax area. I can tell you where I live. I can tell you unequivocally, where I live, the prices of property are coming down. And they're not coming down by a small amount either. It's coming down by a lot. In healthcare, the inflation has to stop. If it doesn't stop, it's a much bigger financial problem than what's going to happen in capital markets. It's an enormous financial problem. And the technologies that are coming out are just unbelievable. They're truly mind-boggling. So, for example, the other day, I learned about a company called IceCure. I'm not invested in anything. It's a private company. What's IceCure? IceCure is a company that actually freezes tumors. Actually it injects something with a biopsy needle, substance, basically freezes a tumor. So the device I saw looked like a biopsy needle to me. And it freezes a tumor on contact, which obviously kills it. And then through arthroscopic surgery, which is basically making a little hole, they just take out the dead matter. Now, of course, there's, like any cancer removal, there's a 50% chance that the tumor is going to come back, but you can do the procedure again. So, obviously, if you take that in isolation, that's a lot cheaper than the available therapy used as an alternative. So I just see technology is going to solve that problem. On the other hand, they're printing up a lot of money. They're being the central banks of the world are printing up a lot of money. And generally speaking, that's inflationary. So I myself think ultimately there's going to be a wage push inflation. That the wage suppression policies of the various governments, that's why we have populism in the world. That's why there's so much unrest. The migration issue, which some people view as wage suppression issues, I'm not taking a side. I'm just trying to answer the question. So I'm neither for nor against anything. I just think a lot of people are going to be against increasing labor force by the amount necessary to hold down wages. The unemployment rate is very low. It's likely to mean that the inflation will come in the form of higher wages and will basically eventually spread to a lot of other things. So I hope that answers that question. Okay, here we have a specific question. It is as follows. Note 4, page 10, the financial statements refers to a $26 million single equity investment equaling 20% of FRMO shareholders' equity. Is this Texas Pacific Land Trust, CPL? And the short answer is yes. But let me give you, I just want to turn to the page of the document in question. And the answer is yes. But let me tell you how this number is calculated, and let me give you some highlights. The number is calculated by taking all the various places where we have that company, let's say Verizon, Mechanics, hard assets, HCA hard assets, or Polestar Fund, or Multidisciplinary Fund, or Multi-Strategy Fund, et cetera, adding up the market values and comparing it to our shareholders' equity. However, there's some things to note about that. So that's the accounting treatment. That's what's required. But what it doesn't tell you is, when it says that's our investment, it's true because it has to be marked to market. But in another sense, it's not our investment because we didn't invest anything remotely close to that amount of money to obtain this market value. So in terms of what our capital commitment was, far, far less. Secondarily, even if I were to tell you the exact dollar amount of our capital commitment, it still would be misleading. Why would it be misleading? There, to answer that question, maybe you best, if you turn to the balance sheet, for November 30th, and on the liability side, you'll notice securities sold, not yet purchased, none of our shorts, proceeds $14,942,000 roughly. Market value, mark to market, is $7,773,000. So, and we've covered positions before. At one time, we don't have any option positions right now, but we used to have like big positions in options that expired, so we had to cover it or end it, and we had certain ETNs that we were short that reached the end of their life, so the ETN actually matured, and we got the cash proceeds. Long and short, we made a lot of money, and we continue to make a lot of money in shorting. So to fund our investments, that's largely where it comes from, which is why the cash keeps growing. So if you want to look at it, and this is certainly not an accounting appropriate way of looking at it, but if you're just trying to analyze the way we're thinking, I think it's entirely appropriate. We're using our cash to sell shorts past the 10 ETFs. And when we get the margin release net of taxes, we apply it to various investments. That's where our investments come from. So that's why the cash can stay come. So yes, it's a big number if you look at the notes, but I really think it's not accurate to say that we invested that money. We didn't invest that money. In our way of looking at it, we just got money for being short something, which we know what the outcome is. It's going to gradually decay. Now, statistically, sometimes it goes against us, but if you take your typical security like that, about 40 weeks out of 52 in a year, you're going in the right direction, not the wrong direction. If it went our way every week, we couldn't sell it to anybody short. So obviously what we're doing is we're taking a certain amount of mark-to-market risk in exchange for a highly likely, I don't want to say certain, but if you read the prospectus of some of these things, maybe you reach another conclusion, to a highly likely rate of return, which is how we fund these things. So I think that's probably the better answer. Okay, let's see. So here we have some questions about cryptocurrency mining. Okay, what do you see as the break-even mining rate? Now, it's important to understand, I'll answer the question specifically in a second, but the break-even mining rate is constantly changing. Constantly changing for a lot of factors. I'll just touch on a few of them. The hash rate, which is the aggregate computational rate of the whole system. Let's just say, for sake of argument, if the hash rate went down because people were turning off their servers, but we weren't turning off our servers, and everything is equal, as they say in Latin, ceteris paribus, our profitability will go up. On the other hand, if the hash rate goes up, but we didn't put more hash on, meaning we didn't buy more servers, in isolation, you could argue that our profitability is going down, but not necessarily so. Why not necessarily so? Because we're competing with more people, but Bitcoin by the system is being produced faster because putting enough hash power on, the block generation rate is not 10 minutes, maybe 8 minutes. So we're getting less Bitcoin proportionally, but it's being produced, if it was 8 minutes, 25% faster. 20% faster in the case of 8 minutes. You have to weigh those two. Anyway, at the moment, and this could change in 2 seconds, but at the moment, we're producing a Bitcoin for $3,500. Which I think is pretty good. What do you think one needs to earn a 25% return over 3 to 5 years in mining? There are 3 variables. The first variable is you need a low electricity rate. And there are places right now we're getting power at 2.2 cents a kilowatt. You can make it if you do that sort of thing. There are other arrangements that you can make even if you had a higher cost of power. You need to be spot on your equipment, and it goes down. You need to have your own repair facility. We have our own repair facility. So trouble is, our equipment is not in our repair facility. So if something goes down and it can't be fixed easily, we have to transport it to our repair facility. That sometimes can be cumbersome. And you also need a state-of-the-art cooling system. By state-of-the-art cooling system, I don't necessarily mean air conditioning. So state-of-the-art cooling system basically is they run water through vents. The vents have fans in them that draw in the hot air in what's called the hot aisles made of servers. Basically, what's done is you take servers, you have the exhausts facing each other, as if you had two engines or two cars running, and the exhausts are facing each other. And that creates a chimney effect. And you have a vent which, with a fan, draws in the hot air. And you basically run it through lukewarm water. Lukewarm water absorbs the heat. The same principle as cooling a nuclear reactor. And you don't use air conditioning. So you need something like that. And in the facilities that we personally own, we have our own facilities, we don't have that yet. Where we can figure out how to do it and do it at a reasonable cost, I don't know yet. I sure like to do it. We haven't done it yet. And that's basically what you need. If you can do all those things, you'll have a great rate of return. And like it is, everybody else, we're learning. We've learned how to buy cheap equipment. We've learned how to parse our purchases in accordance with what the likely life of the equipment is, so we can replace at lower cost per hash, and we can husband our cash. We now do our own repairs. We've come a long way. But we're all learning. Every day we're learning, and every day the industry is changing. There's another question here. Do you see yourselves committing more resources to mining? Short answer, yes. Okay, what is your price per kilowatt? I mentioned that before, so I just want to stress. I think I said it before, but in case I didn't. In different regions in which we operate, we pay different electric rates. So why wouldn't we always go to the cheapest? Because sometimes we're not operating a facility. Sometimes someone else is operating a facility, and they have a state-of-the-art cooling system that we don't have in our facility. So it's worth it to pay more for power. Anyway, I think the highest rate we pay for power anywhere, I may be wrong about this, but I don't believe I am, because we're in a variety of places. I believe it's 5.9 cents a kilowatt is the highest. But we have really great facilities. Facilities are outstanding. So you save on other things. When it gets too hot, your equipment goes down. You don't use it as effectively, and it can actually damage your equipment. You don't want that to happen, for sure. Anyway, you have to weigh all these things. Okay, what mining equipment do you favor and why? Personally, and there are pros and cons to every piece of equipment, and the prices are changing. So far, in my personal experience, the best performing equipment are the most recent iterations of the WhatsMiner equipment. WhatsMiner equipment is a relatively new entry into this space. We bought a few machines to test them, and they were fabulous. And in the ensuing couple of months, we bought hundreds of them. They're just spot on. They're just fabulous. And maybe that's what prompted Bitmain to improve the S17. The S17 is a big improvement over what the prior generation was. Maybe the competition made it happen. At the moment, if you wanted me to vote for one thing, I would vote for WhatsMiner. So it's low cost of operation and very little downtime, as far as I can see. Yes, just to repeat that, WhatsMiner, I'm not making up a name. That's actually the name of the company. WhatsMiner. Because Therese looked at me and she thought I was just making up a code name. That's actually the name of the company. If you look for it, that's WhatsMiner. That's what they call it. Anyway, okay, what are the mining entities preparing for ahead of the May halvening? Okay, I think the mining entities are very well prepared. We've done a major league equipment turnaround. So basically, unless Bitcoin was a lot higher, old equipment, prior generation, was pretty much going to be obsolete. And if even Bitcoin goes up, unless it goes up a lot, I don't see making a lot of money with the old equipment. So what needed to be done was, and this created a problem in the fourth quarter. It turned out to be not a problem at all, but we were prepared for it. We had to begin the equipment turnaround. There was a lot of work that had to be done. It's not just buying equipment and ordering it. You have to de-rack the old stuff. You cannibalize it for parts. You have to install new stuff. There's certain programs, software you can download on it, which actually makes them more profitable than the stated capacities of them. That has to be downloaded, has to be tested. So a lot of stuff, just a lot of boxes, a lot of wires, and I think the team did an outstanding job. So that's basically, I think I don't want to say we're 100% prepared. I think we're almost 100% prepared. There may be a few odds and ends that we haven't dealt with yet, but I think we're very well prepared for the halving. Now, think about the halving, even though this is not the thrust of your question. If everything stays the same, let's say Bitcoin stays the same, the block reward is actually half of what it was. So you're getting half of the revenue that you were getting before. So in stasis, it's all going to go down. Your returns go down. It's just that right now, the equipment is so great, and the return on invested capital, which is not going to last, the return on invested capital is so outstanding. The issue is, what's going to be the hash rate at the halving point in May and beyond? So the question is, how much more hash rate can get online between now and late May? If enough hash gets on, that will drive the price of Bitcoin up. A lot of hash doesn't get on, the price of Bitcoin won't go up. Right now, it's a battle. New equipment is being delivered every day. Old equipment is being unplugged, or because it's wearing out. I don't see very many people replacing the old generation. At least we're not buying the old equipment. There was a point in time, a couple of years ago, we actually did buy used equipment. We're not buying now. Okay, there's a couple of questions on TPL. I'm going to read them, and then I'm going to answer them in generalized ways, because some of the news is actually out, and some of it I just can't say. But two questions. Are you able to work with the present trustees of TPL? Well, and then secondarily, it's a related question. Will the corporate conversion happen? Well, to the latter, you might have observed the SEC filing on TPL. I believe it was yesterday. You can see, so you can read it for yourselves, but the committee recommended the conversion, and you can see what's going on there. And I think that document answers the first question, because I hope you could read that in the document. I thought everybody was working very well together, or at least it strikes me that's what a document should say, because I think it reads very well. But I leave it to you to judge for yourself. Anyway, the information is out there. You can read it, and that's the way it is. Okay. Next question. Bitcoin peaked a little over 2 years ago. There is a lot of hope to halving will increase the price. Do you agree with this? I touched on it a little bit. Let's go into more detail. You can't separate the price of Bitcoin from the economics of producing Bitcoin. Largely, it's determined by the economics of producing Bitcoin. So there are a number of vectors. So it's not like a stock where people say, oh, I'm enthusiastic about the prospects of a Z corporation. We buy it. I'm less enthusiastic. I sell it. There may be people who feel that way, but the price is a commodity. It's just based on the economics. And you can look at the economics a number of ways. One way to look at the economics is network effect. So the network, which is the number of people who buy and sell, trade, pay with Bitcoin, it's like a telephone. So there's a formula, and it's called Metcalfe's law. I'll read you the formula. The formula is N times N minus 1 divided by 2. So what is N? N is the number of people or players or participants, if you prefer, in the marketplace. Let's say you were Alexander Graham Bell, and you invented a telephone. Now you made a telephone. What are you going to do with it? You have one telephone. You can't call anyone, and no one can call you. So the value is 0. So in that formula, n times n minus 1 divided by 2, you'll actually get a 0, because n is 1, and you have the phone. N minus 1, 1 minus 1 is 0. 0 times 1 is 0, divided by 2 is still 0. So it's 0. So you need somebody to talk to. Now there's 2 people. You build a second phone, and you give it to someone. And there's 2. 2 times 2 minus 1, or n minus 1, is 1. 2 times 1 is 2, divided by 2 is 1. Now you went to the value of 1. Now a third person gets a phone, and it's 3. You have 3 is n. 3 minus 1 is 2. Okay? 3 times 2 is 6, divided by 2 is 3. You've gone from a value, a Metcalfe number of 1, Metcalfe number of 3. Now, we'd be here a pretty long time if I kept increasing this by an increment of 1 and going all the way up to 10. But if you had pencil and paper, or if you prefer writing a computer program to do this, and you bring it up to 10, 20, 30, what you're going to see is hyperbola. Basically means a hockey stick up. So when you get that graph, however high you decide to go, and you lay it over a Bitcoin chart, you get more or less the chart. Now, because of all the improvements in the equipment, in terms of the growth of the network, there were a lot of people who bought equipment, and they had no idea, preparing for the next generation, that equipment would obsolete very, very rapidly. They basically were injured greatly by what happened, and they have no choice but to shut their equipment down. So you have this vector of the increasing hash rate, and the decrease in the hash rate comes when people unplug their machines because they're not prepared for the future. You can see it very clearly in Litecoin if you look at a graph of Litecoin hash rate. Litecoin hash rate came down a lot after the halving, or actually even slightly before the halving. Now it's on the rise again. There's new generations equipment in Litecoin. It's arriving, and new equipment is going. The old equipment is going away. New equipment is replacing it. So these things do take time. Now you might ask me, or I'll ask myself in your absence, how do these vectors actually translate into the price? Okay, I get why that might be true. How does it translate into price? Okay, think about it. If you want a Bitcoin, you can get it one of 2 ways. You can buy it, you can make it. So if it was cheaper to buy it than to make it, nobody's going to validate the system. The system wouldn't operate. So if it cost $3,500 to buy a Bitcoin, $8,500 to make a Bitcoin, who in their right mind is going to validate and is going to do that? So basically, it's got to be cheaper, or the system doesn't work. So, okay, let's say it's true. You make Bitcoin is cheaper than to buy Bitcoin. You have 2 choices, even if you're making Bitcoin. You can say, I'm making Bitcoin, I'm going to keep the Bitcoin. You could say, I'm making Bitcoin, I'm going to sell the Bitcoin, and it's so profitable to sell the Bitcoin, I'll sell the Bitcoin because I make it $3,500, I sell it at a much higher price, and I'll use that money, I'll buy more machines. When I buy more machines, the network capacity goes up. The hash rate goes up, and that makes it actually more expensive to produce Bitcoin because there's more competition for getting the block reward. That drives the price up. So when I talked about Metcalfe's law and the network, the hash rate, the hash rate, the computational power is just another way of looking at number of participants. The more participants, the more hash power it's going to be. Just another way of doing it because the hash rates measured in exahash, they're so huge that when you use scientific notation and you say something like, X, however many exahash there is in Bitcoin right now, X times like 127 times 10 to the 18th, give a number like that. People, generally speaking, hard to visualize numbers that are that big because we're not trained to think in scientific notation. So we're trained to think in whole integers. So therefore, I just use an analogy, but really it's hash rate. Okay, so what happens is the very profitability, in a way, has the seeds of lowering the profitability. That's why the Bitcoin mining profitability waxes and wanes. Right now, we're in the waxing mode. Right now, it's unbelievably profitable. As I said, I expect with the halving, it's going to be less profitable, but we'll see what happens when it comes. However, that can be mitigated if enough people took enough of their profits and bought more machines, and they got delivered in time, the hash rate might go up a lot. So in prior iterations, when made Bitcoin go up, the hash rate went up tremendously because of new generations of machines. That might happen right now. I personally think it's a good chance of happening, but it's not a guarantee. It's not a prediction. Because we can't forecast how much the production capacity is. We don't know exactly, even if the orders are going in. Why don't we know that? Here's another piece of information. Because the equipment, chips, were made in Taiwan. The assembly was in the People's Republic of China. So, you'd make the chips, and you'd send them to the People's Republic of China. What's the problem? The problem is, it's a 25% tariff on all electric goods that come from China. And there's no exceptions. Even if you have the goods delivered to Canada, and they've been sitting there for a year or two, and you even bought them prior to the imposition of tariff, you try to bring them across the border, the United States Customs will put a 25% tariff on the value. Now, the value might be a lot less than you paid, because you can claim quite properly on a tax code, and you depreciate the asset. But whatever that number is, it's 25% tariff on it. So no one liked that, and no one wanted to buy equipment and pay a 25% tariff. It really hurts the profitability. So what happened? And this is why cryptocurrency had a problem, that equipment always burns out, and nobody was able to easily replace it. You'll see there were periods of time when the hash rate is actually going down. That's one of the factors. So the production was moved to Malaysia, where there's no tariff. But in new facilities, it's new workers have to be trained. What's the defect rate? How productive are they going to be relative to the Chinese people? Those are all things that are questionable right now. So, anyway, you get the idea. There's a lot of factors in it. Anyway, I think maybe you have more than you wish to even get on the idea of mining and what drives the price and that sort of thing. But basically, that's what it is. It's the economics. Okay, another question related to crypto is, do I see progress in Bitcoin to be used as a store of value or in transactions? Yes, I do. There's some minor progress in the form of backed BAKKT, and which is physical futures delivery. So one of the things you need is, if a merchant is going to take it, they don't necessarily want to hold it. They need to get rid of it. So if somebody has to take it, there needs to be a physical delivery mechanism, and we have it. I believe there are more ways to do physical. That's not the ultimate iteration. Anyway, but so I believe there's going to be improvement in that. Right now it's Intercontinental Exchange, which owns backed. The next thing is, if people in general are going to have it, they don't want to deal, or at least is my opinion, they don't want to deal with private keys. The average person, some people maybe do, but the average person doesn't want to do it. So you're going to have custody. So custody is being rolled out right now. And there are a number of custodians. You could use the backed warehouse as a custodian. Fidelity has it. Coinbase, I believe, has custody now, institutional grade custody. So it's coming. The other thing that people need, that's coming, and I think it's well underway. The other thing we need is for the average person to transact in Bitcoin, or any cryptocurrency for that matter, they basically need an app. Kind of like your credit card, your debit card, or Google Wallet, or Apple Pay, or something of that level. We don't have it yet. However, it's good to bear in mind that Starbucks and Microsoft are partners in Bakkt. And we give them to understand, who knows if this is accurate or not, but we're given to understand that by the halving, or the halvening as they call it, by the halvening in spring, at that time, there's going to be an easy-to-use app available through Starbucks. You can walk in and buy anything Starbucks has to offer. And from Starbucks' point of view, it's not a big risk. At the end of the day, it's just a cup of coffee. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. You're not risking a lot of money. And I think it has prospects of working. So if you make it as ubiquitous that you walk into Starbucks and easily, in the same way you use your various payment apps, and transact in Bitcoin, is an enormous advantage for any retailer, whatever scope, to get people away from credit cards, debit cards, because it costs them a lot of money. It's a 2 to 3%, depending on the retailer, fee. So if you're in a low margin business, let's say you're Amazon, the whole profit margin is not even 2%. Walmart maybe has a 2% profit margin. So theoretically, if Walmart, I'm not saying Walmart's going to Bitcoin, but if Walmart did, and these apps were available, you're talking taking a 2% margin or a 4% margin. That's serious money. So there's enormous incentive. Would it be possible to give information on the situation with the spikes futures on MGX? It would be possible if I had the information. So this is what I know. There's a jurisdictional dispute between the CFTC and the SEC regarding spikes. The nature of the jurisdictional dispute, it's not obvious from the written material, so I'll try to explain it. It's a legal question. So basically, both spikes and VIX, spikes and PIX and VIX, they're both the volatility indexes. They're indexes. There's an element of the law, at least in this country, which has to do with, are you a broad-based index or you're not broad-based index? And the line of demarcation is 10 securities. So if you are basing the VIX on the S&P future, the S&P future is considered to be an index of 500 securities on which they might track X number of options on the S&P future. And those options, not the S&P future itself, that's what goes into creating the VIX. Now, the spikes uses as its base the S&P Spider, SPY, is actually a security. So it is possible to take a legal position that, well, your index, even though it's based on a variety of options, but the underlier is one stock. It's not a future composed of 500 stocks. 500 goes through. It's just a future. It's not a future. It's actually a single security. And therefore, if you're a single security and not a broad-based index, you're not a broad-based index, you are regulated by the SEC. Basically, as best I can explain the legalities of it. So the only way around it is you've got to get somebody to give you permission to operate in a manner slightly different than the common practice. To be fair, no one had ever envisaged that this issue would ever come up. But there you have it. That's the legality of it. You have two different agencies, and you have a lot of lawyers, and they're going to have to. They're all collectively a lot smarter than I am, and I hope that they will come to some reasonable meetings of the mind, whatever that is. I have great respect for all of them, and they might be having a conversation right this second, for all I know. But I'm not going to be able to shed more light on that because they got to figure out how to do this. And you can understand a regulator's concern that where it gets regulated, it sounds like such a picayune point. It's not a picayune point, to be fair to them, because if you set a precedent, it could affect regulation for all sorts of things that have yet to exist. So really, even though who likes these issues to come up? No one, but you can see it from their point of view. So there's got to be some resolution, and I imagine there will be. What it is, I don't know yet, because I don't think it's known. So I wish I could tell you, but I really don't know. And I didn't go to law school, not a member of the bar, and if I was, this wouldn't probably have been my specialty, securities law. So I'm not the one to figure out what the solution is. But I'm sure a lot of talented, goodwill people, they're going to figure it out, and they'll have a solution for it. So I hope that answers the question. Okay, does Horizon Kinetics pay out a regular dividend? If so, would dividends be paid out in Horizon and show up in a line item, dividends, interest, income, net, and income statement? Yes. Horizon Kinetics does pay regular dividends. Generally speaking, Horizon Kinetics pays quarterly, and because Horizon Kinetics is partially owned by FRMO, that number is in dividends and interest income. So it's net. That's where that number would be. Okay, let's see. Do I have any opinion on the uranium industry or Chemico Corporation? I know you like to research how to favor industries, and this certainly qualifies. Yes, it does. There are two basic problems with Chemico. It's certainly a cheap stock. I myself have been tempted over the years to buy it, although I haven't done it yet. Maybe one day I will. There's just a worldwide oversupply of uranium. There's a worldwide oversupply of uranium because the nuclear power industry is just not expanding, which you could argue because it's zero CO2 emissions. You could argue that if you're really worried about CO2 emissions and the effect on the climate, you want to expand nuclear power. But a couple of things about that. Number one, it takes a very long time to permit and then construct a nuclear power reactor. And secondly, for the people who are worried about climate change, it's worthwhile recalling, with all due respect to them, they spent 40 years trying to shut down nuclear reactors. Now they've come to the conclusion that we need more nuclear reactors. Well, there's 40 years of legal precedent and Nuclear Regulatory Commission rulings and all sorts of things that make it very, very difficult to license a reactor. There's state rules, there's federal rules, there's usually court filings, and then after 40 years of talking about how dangerous they are. You might remember the movie The China Syndrome. The average person thinks a nuclear reactor is just a ticking nuclear bomb. It's going to go up. And actually, from a physics point of view, even if the containment vessel of a nuclear reactor were actually to crack, and the moderator, which nuclear reactors used in the Western world is water, if it leaked out, a lot of people think it would leak out, the reactor would overheat, and you get a nuclear explosion, and you would not. It's a physical impossibility. The reason it's a physical impossibility is because the water is when we say moderator, we think of the water as a moderator like in a conventional boiler or an engine, like liquid in your radiator, like let's say ethyl glycol in your radiator is a moderator to cool down your engine. It doesn't cool down the engine in a nuclear reactor. What it does is it slows the progress of neutrons. Why do you want to slow it? Because there are molecules moving back and forth with Brownian motion, and if you slow the neutrons, they're more likely to strike a U-235 molecule and split it. So to create a chain reaction, you have to slow the free neutrons. So when the water leaks out, water basically impedes the speed. When the water leaks out, neutrons speed up. You don't get a chain reaction. The reactor automatically shuts down. That's what actually happens. So you might recall the Fukushima disaster. As I said, water can leak out. That's problematic. But if you're going to internet after this call, hopefully you won't do it until the call is actually ended. But if you do it after the call and you look at the articles at the time, they basically were saying that they think there's going to be another nuclear bomb going off in Japan in the form of a Fukushima reactor. And the Japanese government tried mightily to convince the various people, interested parties, that that was a physical impossibility. And after 3 to 4 or 5 days, enough people who had the scientific acumen to tell the reporters that there's no possibility of blowing up. Whatever might happen, leak water getting into a river or a creek could be a problem, but it's containable and it's limited. Anyway, it's not going to blow up. So So once they realized it wasn't going to blow up, the interest on the story was a lot less. So anyway, take from it that what you want, and hopefully, if you're interested, you'll look at those articles. Anyway, maybe it's more about nuclear power than you want to know. Okay, can I please give us an update on the state of crypto mining? And you have increased your investment for FRMO. Give me your positive outlook on the cryptocurrency mining. Well, yes, we have increased our mining investment. We would have increased it more were it not for the fact that until very recently means maybe 10 days ago, if you ordered equipment, we had ordered equipment in September. And we knew we had no chance of getting delivery until Thanksgiving. We didn't get delivery on Thanksgiving. We started getting delivery, and I say started, not full delivery, a couple days before Christmas. And then when you get delivery, as I said, you need to test it, you need to download software, you need to de-rack the old equipment, you need to rack the new equipment, you need to arrange it in the hot aisles and cold aisles. Well, there's a lot of work involved in it. You obviously have to test it and make sure it actually works. You didn't get damaged equipment, which does happen sometimes, although it didn't seem to happen in this recent iteration. So it takes a number of days to actually start getting production. So it took us a long time. Now you get the equipment faster. I'm going to, just for the fun of it, I'm going to the internet because I can do things. Because I have the thing right here. I'm just going to look it up and see what it would take delivery. Like if I ordered today, look at something, and if I did it today, how long would it take me to get delivery? Now, just because they say this doesn't mean it's true, but I'm going to just look at something here. What is the most recent deal? Okay. An S17, right? And today is January 23rd. To give you an idea, an S17, which I think of the Bitmain equipment is the best you could buy. That's the machine. If I were buying today, that's the machine I would buy. Today is January 23rd. It says here the shipping date is March 1st to March 10th, in that range, which really means March 10th. Now, it's coming from Malaysia. So it's going to be on a ship. It's going to take 2 weeks to 3 weeks to get to you. So it means if you order equipment today, at least the S17, which is what you want, it might be online in April, early April. I say might, because these aren't hard and fast numbers. So to give you an idea, that's the state of mining. Now, ultimately, the equipment's fabulous. Even the S17 is fabulous. Even after the halving, and if nothing happens to improve the Bitcoin price, even after the halving, it's still going to be fabulous. That's how productive the thing is. So the equipment is going to arrive, and it's going to get installed. The question is how fast and when. It all pertains to what I said earlier about the move in production to Malaysia. In fact, in Malaysia, if you think that if they were putting it on a ship, it goes from Malaysia to Singapore on a ship. So it might be a couple of days of truck in Malaysia. It goes across the causeway to Singapore. They got to load it on the ship, and it's containers, and it's not the only thing on the ship. And then the ship is leaving until the ship is fully laden. So they might be shipping other things. Who knows what? And your server is going nowhere until the ship is fully laden. Then it's got to sail from, I guess it's the Malacca Strait, all the way to Los Angeles port. Then they take it, then they unload the ship, and it gets on a truck, and it goes somewhere in North America, depending on where it is. Like I would tell you where our facilities are, but it's considered to be horrible practice to do that because we got a lot of expensive stuff there, and we don't want anybody knowing where it is. We have to be cognizant of security. There are, and if you were to see in some of the places we are what the security arrangements are, they're very tight. and we're all told, don't tell anybody where it is, just say North America, which is a very big place. So I say North America, it's a very big place, and that's where our stuff is, someplace North America. And I'm not going to be more specific than that. So I hope that gives you an idea of what's going on in crypto mining, and we are going to increase our investment, and hopefully we can do it soon. But those are the limiting factors, which is obviously totally out of our control. But we have to live with that, and we do. So that concludes the questions, and that concludes the remarks, and it only remains to me to thank you so much for all the questions. I really thought the questions were just fabulous this time, really fabulous. I enjoyed answering them, and if I missed anything or you want more information, please don't hesitate to contact us. We'll give you more information if you so desire it. And, of course, we're going to reprise this in about 3 months, and look forward to talking to you and hopefully enlightening you. Thank you so much, and good evening.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. This concludes today's presentation. You may now disconnect.